Alright, guys, chapter 3. How the poison of possessions wrought with Pilon, and how evil temporarily triumphed in him. The next day, Pilon went to live in the other house. It was exactly like Danny's house, only smaller. It had its pink rose of Castile over the porch, its weed-grown yard, its ancient barren fruit trees, its red geraniums, and Mrs. Soto's chicken yard was next door. Danny became a great man, having a house to rent, and Pilon went up the social scale by renting a house. It is impossible to say whether Danny expected any rent or whether Pilon expected to pay any. If they had, both were disappointed. Danny never asked for it, and Pilon never offered it. The two friends were often together. Let Pilon come buy a jug of wine or a piece of meat, and Danny was sure to drop in to visit. And if Danny were lucky or astute in the same way, Pilon spent a riotous night with him. Poor Pilon would have paid the money, if he ever had any, but he never did have. Not long enough to locate Danny, Pilon was an honest man. It worried him sometimes to think of Danny's goodness and his own poverty. One night he had $1, acquired in a manner so astounding that he tried to forget it immediately for fear the memory might make him mad. A man in front of the San Carlos Hotel had put the dollar in his hand, saying, "Run down and get 4 bottles of ginger ale. The hotel is out." Such things were almost miracles, Pilon thought. One should take them on faith, not worry and question them. He took the dollar up the road to give to Danny, but on the way he bought a gallon of wine, and with the wine he lured 2 plump girls into his house. Danny, walking by, heard the noise and joyfully went in. Pilon fell into his arms and placed everything at Danny's disposal. And later, after Danny had helped to dispose one of the girls and half of the wine, there was a really fine fight. Danny lost a tooth and Pilon had his shirt torn off. The girls stood shrieking by and kicked whichever man happened to be down. At last Danny got up off the floor and butted one of the girls in the stomach as she went out, the door croaking like a frog. The other girls stole 2 cooking pots and followed her. For a little while Danny and Pilon wept over the perfidy of women. "Thou knowest not what bitches women are," Danny said wisely. "I do know," said Pilon. "Thou knowest not." "I do know, liar." There was another fight, but not a very good one. After that, Pilon felt better about the unpaid rent. Had he not been host to his landlord? A number of months passed. Pilon began again to worry about the rent, and as time went by, the worry grew intolerable. At last, in desperation, he worked a whole day cleaning squids for Chin Key and made $2. In the evening, he tied his red handkerchief around his neck, put on his father's revered hat, and started up the hill to pay Danny the $2 on account. But on the way he bought 2 gallons of wine. It is better so, he thought, if I give him hard money. He does not express how warmly I feel toward my friend. But a present now, and I will tell him the 2 gallons cost $5. This was silly, and Pilon knew it, but he indulged himself. No one in Monterey better knew the price of wine than Danny. Pilon was proceeding happily. His mind was made up, his nose pointed straight toward Danny's house. His feet moved not quickly but steadily in the proper direction. Under each arm he carried a paper bag, and a gallon of wine was in each bag. It was purple dusk, that sweet time when the day's sleeping is over, and the evening of pleasure and conversation has not begun. The pine trees were very black against the sky, and all objects on the ground were obscured with dark, but the sky was as mournfully bright as memory. The gulls flew lazily home to the sea rocks after a day's visit to the fish canneries of Monterey. Pilon was a lover of beauty and a mystic. He raised his face into the sky, and his soul arose out of him into the sun's afterglow. That not too perfect Pilon, who plotted and fought, who drank and cursed, trudged slowly on, but a wistful and shiny Pilon went up to the seagulls, where they bathed on sensitive wings in the evening. That Pilon was beautiful, and his thoughts were unstained with selfishness and lust, and his thoughts are good to know. Our Father is in the evening, he thought. These birds are flying across the forehead of the Father. Dear birds, dear seagulls, how I love you all. Your slow wings stroke my heart as the hand of a gentle master strokes the full stomach of a sleeping dog, as the hand of Christ stroked the heads of little children. Dear birds, he thought, fly to Our Lady of sweet sorrows with my open heart. And then he said the loveliest words he knew. Ave Maria, gratia plena. The feet of the bad Pilon had stopped moving. In truth, the bad Pilon for the moment had ceased to exist. Hear this recording angel. There was nor is nor ever has been a purer soul than Pilon's at that moment. Galvez's bad bulldog came to Pilon's deserted legs, standing alone in the dark, and Galvez's bulldog sniffed and went away without biting the legs. A soul washed and saved is a soul doubly in danger, for everything in the world conspires against such a soul. Even the straws under my knees says St. Augustine, shout to distract me from prayer. Even the straws under my knees, says St. Augustine, shout to distract me from prayer. Pilon's soul was not even proof against his own memories, for as he watched the birds, he remembered that Mrs. Pastano used seagulls sometimes in her tamales, and that memory made him hungry, and hunger tumbled his soul out of the sky. Pilon moved on, once more a cunning mixture of good and evil. Galvez's bad bulldog turned snarling and stalked back, sorry now that he had let go such a perfect chance at Pilon's leg. Pilon hunched his arms to ease the weight of the bottles. It is a fact verified and recorded in many histories that the soul capable of the greatest good is also capable of the greatest evil. Who is there more impious than a backsliding priest? Who more carnal than a recent virgin? This, however, may be a matter of appearance. Pilon, just back from heaven, was, although he did not know it, singularly receptive of every bitter wind, toward every evil influence that crowded the night about him. True, his feet still moved toward Danny's house, but there was neither intention nor conviction in them. They awaited the littlest signal to turn about. Already Pilon was thinking how stupendously drunk he could get on 2 gallons of wine, and more, how long he could stay drunk. It was almost dark now. The dirt road was no longer visible, nor the ditches on either side. No moral conclusion is drawn from the fact that at this moment, when Pilon's impulses were balanced as precariously as a feather between generosity and selfishness, at this very moment Pablo Sanchez happened to be sitting in the ditch at the side of the road, wishing he had a cigarette and a glass of wine. So Pablo Sanchez is now in the picture. Ah, the prayers of the millions, how they must fight and destroy each other on their way to the throne of God. This is still the narrator. Pablo first heard footsteps, then saw a blurred figure, and then recognized Pilon. Ah, ay, amigo, he called enthusiastically. What great burden is it thou carriest? Pilon stopped dead and faced the ditch. I thought you were in jail, he said severely. I heard about a goose. So I was, Pilon, Pablo said jocularly, but I was not well received. The judge said the sentence did me no good, and the police said I ate more than the allowance for 3 men. And so, he finished proudly, I am on parole. Pilon was saved from selfishness. True, he did not take the wine to Danny's house, but instantly he invited Pablo to share it at the rented house. If 2 generous paths branch from the high road of life, and only one can be followed, who is to judge which is the best? Pilon and Pablo entered the little house joyfully. Pilon lighted a candle and produced 2 fruit jars for glasses. Health, said Pablo. Salud, said Pilon. And in a few moments, salud, said Pablo. Mud in your eyes, said Pilon. They rested a little while. Su servidor, said Pilon. Down the rat hole, said Pablo. 2 gallons is a great deal of wine, even for 2 paisanos. Spiritually, the jugs may be graduated thus, just below the shoulder of the first bottle, serious and concentrated conversation. 2 inches farther down, sweetly sad memory. 3 inches more, thoughts of old and satisfactory loves. An inch, thoughts of old and bitter loves. Bottom of the first jug, general and undirected sadness. Shoulder of the second jug, black, unholy despondency. 2 fingers down, a song of death or longing. A thumb, every other song each one knows. The graduation stopped here, for the trail splits and there was no certainty. From this point on, anything can happen. But let us go back to the first mark, which says serious and concentrated conversation, for it was at that place that Pilon made his coup. Pablo, he said, dost thou never get tired of sleeping in ditches, wet and homeless, friendless and alone? No, said Pablo. Pilon mellowed his voice persuasively. So I thought, my friend, when I was a dirty gutter dog, I too was content, for I did not know how sweet a little house is, and a roof and a garden. Ah, Pablo, this is indeed living. It's pretty nice, Pablo agreed. Pilon pounced. See, Pablo, how you would like to rent part of my house. How would you like to rent part of my house? There would never be the cold ground for you anymore, never the hard sand under the wharf with crabs getting in your shoes. How would you like to live here with me? Sure, said Pablo. Look, you will pay only $15 a month, and you may use all the house except my bed and all the garden. Think of it, Pablo, and if someone should write you a letter, he will have some place to send it to. Sure, said Pablo, that's swell. Pilon sighed with relief. He had not realized how the debt to Danny rolled on his shoulders. The fact that he was fairly sure Pablo would never pay any rent did not mitigate his triumph. If Danny should ever ask for money, Pilon could say, I will pay when Pablo pays. They moved on to the next graduation, and Pilon remembered how happy he had been when he was a little boy. No care then, Pablo. I knew not sin, I was very happy. So they would move on to the next graduation, and Pilon remembered how happy he had been when he was a little boy. So Pilon says, no care then, Pablo. I knew not sin, I was very happy. We have never been happy since, Pablo agreed sadly. So like it's satirical, but it's not like he's actually writing about like the paisanos and kind of what he saw and what he assumed what they were dealing with, and he found another man and they drink together. I don't know. What if it's more darker than that? Or they just put up with each other. Misery loves company. Or I have, you have. You know, if I have it, you can have it too, dog. I ain't changing. I just got lucky having this. It fell in my lap. Pilon's not tripping. Pilon need to get a girlfriend. Maybe she'll be down at work, or I don't know. But sometimes girlfriends will be like, they're just using you. Why do you want their friends around? Yeah, I like this book. Peace, y'all.